Hey there, guitar lovers. Back with another installment of Licks You Can Learn From. Welcome back if you saw the one on Andy Timmons. And if it's your first time here, the idea is we're going to take 3 licks from a great player. One kind of easy, one medium difficulty, and one pretty darn hard. And we're not just going to help you learn the lick, but we're going to point out, from my point of view, what makes the lick great and how to take those learning points and put them into your own playing. For this video, we're going to look at 3 licks from none other than Joe Bonamassa. Joe is an absolute force in the guitar world. He is a total workaholic who has created a huge body of work in a relatively short period of time. He's a former child prodigy turned marketing and business wizard, a guitar collector extraordinaire who's now turned producer, and he's helping many other great players move their careers forward. Joe can be a bit of a polarizing figure in the guitar world. Lots of people seem to want to rip on him about various things. If you get right down to it, I think it's because he's become hugely successful, and I think there's a lot of folks in the music world that seem to see success as a bad thing. But the fact remains, the guy can play his ass off, and there's a hell of a lot that we can all learn from him. His style goes way beyond the flashy Eric Johnson-ish pentatonic cascades that a lot of people pay attention to. So let's get busy and learn some licks. So the first of our 3 licks is the second half of the ending solo of the song Happier Times from the record Live from the Royal Albert Hall. The Royal Albert Hall record and concert video were when Joe's career really started to blow up, and rightfully so. It was a business masterstroke and an awesome display of blues and rock guitar. Happier Times is a bluesy ballad in C minor, but there are some songwriting surprises within the tune. There's a couple of sections after all this mellow bluesiness that it sounds like a bomb went off on stage. It's really cool. So what can we learn from this lick? Number 1, the power of repetition. There are 4 sections to this passage, and each one starts with the same screaming bend on the high E string. This creates a lot of tension and really sucks in the listener. Number 2, how creating and using a motif or theme allows you to get a lot of mileage out of an idea by just changing a few notes. Number 3 is how Joe changes subdivisions in the middle of a phrase, and it feels like he's shifting gears, or like you're in a roller coaster that's just gone over the top of a hill and you're gaining momentum. And then number 4 is how to maintain your intensity and your focus in your phrasing, which allows you to take a slow lick and make it very dramatic and show-stopping. This lick is played over a chord progression that goes from C minor to B flat over C. I'm going to give it a go, and then we're going to get into the breakdown. Check it out. Sort of my way of thinking, this entire lick happens around the C minor chord at the 15th fret. But there's any number of ways you can think about or visualize these notes. If it helps you to benchmark pentatonic boxes, for instance, you could think of the 3rd and 4th pentatonic boxes of C minor. If you're a 3-note per string person, you could think F Dorian and C natural minor. It also helps me, for instance, to visualize a C minor 7th arpeggio. However it's most helpful to you. But you should know that all of these notes come out of the C natural minor scale, or C Aeolian mode. As I mentioned, there are 4 sections to this solo, and each one starts off with a screaming whole step bend of the B flat at the 18th fret of the high string up to C. Each time has got a heaping helping of vibrato on it. So one of the first things you might need to work on if you're not really accomplished with it is bent note vibrato. Joe's vibrato tends to be on the faster side. And one of the things about this bend is he takes his time getting up to pitch. And he also hesitates a little bit before he applies that vibrato. Now, one point that you need to note, if you watch the video, if you listen to the recording, Joe plays this song with a capo at the 3rd fret, which basically turns his A string into a C. So between ending a phrase and starting the next one, he'll hit the open A string, which gives basically a C note drone. It's a great effect in the song, and it's also a great practice tool. Practice getting your bends in tune by hitting that drone and then bending up to pitch. You'll be able to hear it when it's out of tune. You get that weird pulsing Doppler effect type thing. Now, I'm lazy. I didn't put the capo on it. I'm tuned my A string up to C, so that's the way I'm doing it here. But if you watch the video, you will note that he plays with a capo at the 3rd fret. So after that big bend, the first section continues with a descending line of B flat, A flat, G on the high E string, and then F on the B string. Then he plays G, A flat with a quick pull off back to the G, hits the F note on the B string again, and then goes back to the G at the 15th fret of the high E. So that whole section sounds like this. That's followed by a really cool technique called pedal point, where against a G note, which is our pedal point on the 15th fret of the high E, he plays F, E flat, then he plays a D note. Now he articulates that note 3 times, and on the 3rd time, he bends it up a half step and releases it. That whole part sounds like this. He then plays a C note at the 17th fret of the G string, holds it, and then he does a really cool technique that he demonstrates several times on the Royal Albert Hall record, where he has this quick bend, and it almost sounds like a fretless Middle Eastern instrument. Then he ends that phrase by hitting the open A string, which is our C drone note. So that part sounds like... whole phrase. Section 2 starts off the same way. The big screaming bend from B flat to C, the descending B flat, A flat, G, and F note. But here's where he switches things up a bit, and we get a glimpse of the famous Bonamassa cascading descending passages a la Eric Johnson. He sort of switches gears, changes subdivisions between 8th notes to 16th notes in the second grouping of 4 notes that he plays. So he plays B flat, A flat, G, and F as 8th notes. Then he plays A flat, G, F, and E flat as 16th notes. Then he plays G, E flat, D, and C, also as 16th notes. So we've got a grouping of 4 8th notes, 8 16th notes. Then he switches it up again, and he plays a quintuplet. He plays 5 notes in the space of 4 16th notes. He plays E flat and D on the B string at the 16th and 15th fret. He then plays a C at the 17th fret of the G string, slides to the 15th fret of the G string, plays B flat, and then plays the G at the 12th fret. So that quintuplet. So here's the whole passage. Kind of crazy. He just keeps cramming more notes into the same space, and you get that feeling of a car gaining momentum, or like I said before, a roller coaster going over the top of the hill. He wraps this section up by playing the F and E flat on the D string at the 15th and 13th frets. Then he plays E flat, F, and he slides up into the G, and then hits B flat at the 13th fret of the G string. Lets that double stop ring out, ends up the phrase by sliding back to the F and playing E flat at the 13th fret of the D string. That whole section. Section 3 of the solo is nearly identical to section 1 with a variation. We've got the big screaming bend, the descending pattern, the pedal point. But in the first section where he re-articulates that D, here he does a wide intervallic skip and he jumps down to the G note at the 17th fret on the D string. He goes back to the D at the 15th fret of the B string and bends it up a half step. Then ends with C and B flat on the G string, followed by the drone note. So that whole section sounds like. Then section 4 is the big dramatic conclusion. He plays that bent B flat to C 3 times, hits it a 4th time, immediately releases it and pulls off to the G. Then he grabs the F at the 18th fret of the B string, bends it up to G. Then he plays that B flat at the 18th fret of the high E, re-articulates the double stop, so it sounds like. After the double stop, he hits that bent F note again, but immediately lets off the bend, hits the E flat at the 16th fret, grabs the C note at the 17th fret of the G string. It sounds like this. Then he slides out of it because it's going into that big heavy section that, like I said, sounds like a bomb's going off. So even though this solo is not too technical, there's so much to learn. This solo is all about creating drama and intensity. He does this by repeating a theme but making variations to it, applying vibrato to bent notes, adding a little speed to the mix, and then sticking in double stops to really add weight to the lines. This is just a great song, and the performance on the Royal Albert Hall record was so on point. The execution was fantastic. The tone was incredible. And it's a great example to get into your ears and under your fingertips.